everybody, this is JHNN, and this is 5'3". So what I understand from here is that I am supposed to fill out 3 from the top 5 that I got from this card, and it's coming from DMK, the Modest Kids. Alright, so top 5 things that inspired your latest EP. When I wrote this thing, I was inspired by number 1, Black Panther, because around the time that I wrote it, it was when Black Panther was like selling out, and one of the biggest movies in the world was Black Panther at that time. So I created a fantasy that this guy named Joel kind of came into my world, and I just started making synthwave. And that comes from me making house music for a very long time. So I just wanted to change it up this year and created this whole backstory behind it. Number 2 is Afrofuturism movement. So this is something that I didn't know about, but was brought because of Black Panther, which is the futuristic movement that had to do more with fantasy than it has to do with activism. I just got inspired by the Afrofuturism movement, and I started looking at Instagram accounts, and it was sick. And then number 3 is the YYC synthwave movement. This is actually something that I personally discovered in like, I don't know how long it was. It was like 2014. I was noticing the Drive soundtrack was becoming really popular, and a lot of people just started to make synthwave from it, and for some reason I was seeing a lot of metalheads make synthwave, and these metalheads were actually good at what they were doing. So I got really inspired by the fact that like that whole synthwave movement created that type of thing. So I was very inspired by seeing a lot of local synthwave kids kind of get together, and I wanted to create something that honors them more than overshadows them, because I don't think I'm the best at it, and everybody who bought it, I don't think I'm the best at it. So that was the whole thing, was being inspired by YYC synthwave. If you guys haven't heard the people who come out of it, just check out the EP on Dem Modest Kids called the YYC Synthwave Compilation, and that's to advertise those people, and that's like 15 artists that I contacted, so there's more than that. There's like at least around 20 or 30 artists that make synthwave here in Calgary. What's the last one? Just kidding, I got 2 more. The funk movement also inspired this album. I really was very much so inspired by what was going on with the funk movement in the 70s, and it was kind of cool to see how it became kind of like disco-y or whatever, but the funk movement in the 80s is actually more of what my album sounds like. It has like synthesizers and all that stuff, so I wanted to make something. I thought I was going to make disco, and then I found out that I was making funk, so that's what happened. It became more funk than disco. So yeah, I was really inspired by that. And the last one is actually the synth pop movement in Britain. So I'm talking those bands like Depeche Mode, Gary Newman, there's like a whole bunch of those bands that kind of made like synth pop back in like the early 1980s. That were just, they started this whole scene. Oh, OMD. So OMD was one of those bands too. Man, there's a documentary on it. It's called Synth Britannia. So I call it the synth pop movement in Britain. That was like totally big. And Gary Newman was kind of like the first one to kind of break it into America. And then there was also Depeche Mode that was a part of that whole movement too. And then it just became like this thing where everybody was like being inspired by that are on the dance floor, kind of like Italo disco was a big one too, so that movement inspired it. Alright, second top 5. So the first one is one of my good friends I've been hanging out with for a while, and his name's Netrunner. I actually saw him play synthwave at I was part of the Alberta Electronic Music Conference, and they were doing a synthwave show at Night Owl, which is now closed down. And I saw him play, and I was actually blown away by how good he was. So it was really cool to see someone doing that, and I actually contacted him and asked him to do a remix for this album. So he was like the first one that inspired this whole thing, because it wasn't just him, it was like 4 different people making synthwave that actually got me to go to the show. The second one is Homesick. If you guys don't know, he was making, I don't know what he was doing, he was on like Instagram story making like just this funky stuff. It was so sick. Like whatever he was making, I was really excited about. He did a remix with what's his name? Oh, Ray Sherman. He did the remix Sway for Ray Sherman, and it was just so good, and I like was obsessed with it for a while. But he inspired that like whole funky sound. I actually wasn't trying to make his music, but it was inspiring to see someone else try to make that music. It encouraged me more to finish my album. And the last one, not the last one, is Soulier. Soulier actually inspired me because he kind of got a tour going on in China. But it's not only that, it's like he was making deep house, and his deep house was like something along the lines that I was trying to do. Always inspired me, and he always tried to do something that was his own. It was really awesome. He's from Calgary, if you guys don't know. Check out his stuff. One of my favorite songs by him is In the Woods. Check that out. I hope it's still around. And they're from Calgary too. I've been following them since 2012, right before they kind of became a thing. Like now they're signed to Universal Music and selling out shows in Calgary and everywhere else. The beach season was really cool. It was cool to see something that wasn't like metal or dance or something that was just like different. It was just like, it's inspired by hip hop and trap, and it was like inspired by electronic music too. So there's like this combination of it. So they're really inspiring to see. Tropic Harbor. So they're from Edmonton. I don't know if they base themselves out of Edmonton anymore because they moved to Victoria, so, well, that's fun. But I'm gonna say they're from Edmonton anyways because they inspired me. Their last album I heard was just so good. I think that was their first album. But I got a chance to hear it, and I heard it on, I don't know how I found it, but I found it. It's so good. And I kind of tried to keep a close relationship with them, but now they're in Victoria, so whatever. I'm still saying that they're from Edmonton, and I hope they say that too. I am not going to say all my top 5 artists that inspire me in general. I'm going to say what relates to the album. So the top 5 artists that inspired me in general on this album were Erykah Badu, of course, because her Baduism was like turning 20, and I was seeing a lot of posts about it, and then I just heard how cool it was. I actually retroactively discovered Baduism. I always liked her, I just didn't really like love her until I retroactively rediscovered her, and that was like during this time, and that kind of changed my sound. Outkast is AT-Aliens. They inspired me in general. I always liked Outkast, but AT-Aliens around this time was like so goddamn good. Around this time, it was just so, it was perfect. It made a good sound for my album. Another one was Chaos. Chaos is from Toronto, if you guys didn't know. He's now like, I think he now lives in Vancouver. But anyways, he inspired me because he didn't really give a shit what people said that he was trying to rap about. He wanted to make rock music, and it was kind of cool to see someone kind of combining both worlds into one. And he's been doing that since 2003, so it wasn't like Gym Class Heroes or anything around the time he was doing it. He was doing it before Gym Class Heroes, just letting you guys know that. Number 4 actually relates more to the album than anything, and that's Cameo. Cameo is a retroactive discovery too. I was listening to hip hop a lot. I think I was listening to, there's this one song that Jermaine Dupri did with Usher and all that stuff, and I found out that was Cameo, and then I kept hearing Word Up in my head. Word Up kept coming into my head, and then that also was a big influence on the album. I really liked the way that stuff kind of sounded. But yeah, Cameo is like the 80s inspiration that I was talking about. So that's kind of what got my album the way it did. The last one is Kraftwerk. These are all retroactive discoveries. I discovered that Kraftwerk really inspired a million people, and even though I wasn't inspired by them at the time, because I kind of was trying to do this whole forward thinking, like trying to kind of be inspired by music that's coming out now, as opposed to going back and like saying all the music that sucks, everything that comes out now kind of sucks, which I just don't believe. There's so much more music that people haven't discovered now. Anyways, Kraftwerk was really cool to see because I found out that they were the first real live electronic act that they were programmers first and foremost, and it was cool to see what they had to come up with back in the 70s. And they started a whole thing that was going on in Germany, and it influenced a whole bunch of people to make synth pop. Like, it was really cool to see how synth pop people were making music because of Kraftwerk. So it created a movement, and that inspired my Afrofuturism album. So now it's time to do the call to action. I am promoting my project Afrofuturism. This is actually an example of what I would like to see. Yeah, this is for the Modest Kids 5'3" top 5 list. We're trying to mostly promote artists in Alberta that are doing something that's not just metal and country. No offense. I don't hate country, I don't hate metal. Just there's an abundance of metal and country in Calgary, and it's very, very, very important to distinguish the differences and see that there's more than just metal and country in Calgary. There's house, there's just more to it. There's the bass scene in Calgary and Alberta in general is pretty big